Have you been avoiding conflict lately? Are you afraid that if you speak your truth to someone, you might damage the relationship permanently? Is inner conflict eating you up inside? Maybe you're thinking one thing, but doing another, and you just can't seem to get your head and heart to line up. As humans, we all deal with conflict. Join Jennifer McKenna now as she talks to business leaders about the importance of conflict and how we can all move through it with greater grace and ease, ultimately taking our relationships and our lives to the next level by facing conflict courageously.
Welcome to today's show, everyone. It's Jennifer, and we're here to talk about this week's topic on conflict rising. It's about holistic medicine and why it's so important for us to integrate it into our lives. So I've asked Dr. Mike Greenberg to be here on the show today. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background before I ask him about his. Dr. Mike has been an important, very important part of my wellness journey and my daughter's. And we both have had lots of health issues over the years that I'll get into as the show progresses. But I'm tickled to have him on the show. He is masterful at what he does as a holistic chiropractor. And I will let him explain to all of you what exactly that is and why he got into it. So, Dr. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So let's start off with that. Tell us what is a holistic chiropractor, first of all, and how did you get into this?
Okay. A holistic chiropractor is someone that looks at the whole body. Chiropractors generally look for alignment and look for misalignments, and they'll look at the spine. And that's their main focus because the nervous system controls the body. And if there's a problem like too much stress or tension, that'll translate to the muscles tightening up, which will affect the vertebrae and cause a misalignment. And then symptoms start. So it's a vicious cycle. And a holistic chiropractor will think, well, if it's stress that's causing the misalignment, maybe we need to deal with the stress. So a holistic chiropractor will look at the body, the mind, the spirit, and nutrition, and look at all the different possibilities that will be causing somebody discomfort or causing their symptoms. And what happened with me was after 9 years of practice, my life was really good. And it seemed like the only complaint I ever got from patients is that some of them didn't like the popping sounds. So I thought, geez, if I could do chiropractic without the noises associated with it, my life would be perfect. And so I decided to take a lot of seminars. There's probably 100 different techniques in chiropractic. And it took me on a journey. And I learned how to treat allergies. I learned how to treat mind-body issues, like when somebody gets stuck in life. I learned how to balance the body's energy, and I learned how to treat trauma. And there were things that I was exposed to. I said, nah, that's not for me. I don't want to do that, like putting my finger in somebody's mouth or something like that. So after a few years, I learned how to realign the spine or relax the muscles without manipulation.
Awesome. And I can give a testimony that it is truly phenomenal what you do. It is non-invasive. It's almost as though you have an experience as a client or patient coming out of it thinking, I don't know how he does what he does because it doesn't seem like he's doing much.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people,
right?
when they go to a
but
chiropractor.
It is extraordinary, yes.
When they go to a chiropractor, they're hoping that this person or lady doesn't hurt them. And when they come to see me, they go, did he do anything? So that's the usual initial response.
Yeah, it's truly extraordinary. And if I weren't such an enormous advocate and proponent for it, you wouldn't be on the show today. So I just cannot stress enough that less is more in this case. There's no needles, there are no instruments there, that are going to invade your body or puncture anything or make any cracking noises. But it is truly powerful in how it does heal the body and also optimize wellness. And that's really what I want to talk about today, more than anything, because, listeners may be wondering, well, what does this have to do with conflict and cultural issues and so forth? But for me, back in 2015, I was asked to be the keynote speaker at a women's conference in the Midwest. And one of my main messages to the ladies in the audience was, we have a problem when the health of our economy is dependent upon the illness of our people. And that is my view of where we've gone with the paradigm that we have right now around health and wellness. And I think that there is a paradigm shift that is occurring, which is, can we focus on prevention? Can we focus on wellness? Why is everything focused on illness? I had a friend years ago who had a holistic center where she did yoga and all kinds of different practices. And she said that in her research, she learned that in ancient China, doctors were not paid if patients became sick. They are only paid to keep you healthy, to keep you well. So if a patient got sick, you weren't paid. So you talk about a paradigm shift, right? Isn't that eye-opening when we think about how the world works in terms of the illness and the impact and the healthcare industry? Dozens, hundreds, thousands of products and services that are all about illness. So what you do, in my opinion, is turn that on its head. And if there is a problem that we come to you for, you can fix that. But then we shift very quickly into wellness. Then how do we optimize? So talk to us about this, if you don't mind. I don't know where you want to begin. I know for me, I think about prevention versus intervention. I think about Eastern and Western and how they come together in terms of practices and paradigm shifts. Western practitioners are taught how to treat symptoms with pills and interventions, surgery, right? And a lot of Eastern practices are about optimizing the system. So where do you want to begin with that conversation?
Well, I think you hit it on the nail on the head by shifting, rather than the standard medical model of waiting till you break down to fix it. Why don't we focus on prevention? Because the old adage is, right, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I think there are a new breed of doctors. They're called functional medicine doctors. It could be a medical doctor. It could be an osteopath. It could be a nutritionist. It could be a nurse practitioner. It could be a chiropractor. But there's a new breed of doctors, and they're called functional medicine doctors, and they try to look at the underlying problems that a person may have. And typically somebody goes to a practitioner when they have pain, when they have a problem. And as like in cancer, the person could be developing that for 5 years before they have any symptoms. So the new breed of doctors, they look for parasites. If there was a stool test that would only show what's happening with the colon, but a person could have a parasite in their small intestine or liver or another part of their body, and that could be causing symptoms. We know today that dental problems, it's much more than just a cavity. If a person has had a root canal or has some captivation and an underlying infection in their mouth, that could be causing their foot problem. That could be causing their sciatica. Unfortunately, there's a lot of heavy metal toxicity mercury, not just from fish, but that actually maybe are in the fillings. And aluminum has been associated with Alzheimer's, so we need to maybe do a hair analysis test to find out if a person is having too many heavy metals in their body, which will lead to serious problems. We like to think we eat right, but their biochemistry is different. We're all individuals, so we tend to eat what we like. So we can kind of focus. As human beings, we tend to eat the same thing over and over again because that's what we like, and maybe we're not have optimal nutritional balance. And food allergies. When I started with food allergies 25 years ago, it was thought that was a psychosomatic problem. Somebody had IBS or migraines or different types of digestive issues. It could be caused by food allergies, and it's not. Probably in the last 15 years, they've come out with a blood test to measure delayed reactions, IgG, as opposed to immediate reactions like peanuts and shellfish. And a lot of times, people's arthritis is due to what they're eating. And it could be a healthy food. It doesn't have to be fast food or junk food. It could be a vegetable, and that's like tomatoes or something like that, and that's what's causing their arthritis. So I think what you're saying is we don't need to wait until we have severe pain, until you have a heart attack or cancer. There's a lot we can do to focus on prevention besides the yearly blood test to see that our cholesterol is too high or something like that.
Right. Yes. And so one of the messages I want to make sure listeners understand is that I am not at all taking one camp over another. I'm not saying only holistic medicine, don't go to Western practitioners. I'm not saying either is good or bad, or that it's one pitted against the other. And I think a lot of people have that takeaway message. My message is this: thank the heavens that we have Western practitioners should, God forbid, you come into some very serious physical traumas or those acute physical crises that need massive intervention. Thank goodness we have amazing practitioners that can save your life and turn that situation around. And so Western medicine absolutely has its place, and its beautiful place in our lives and in the world. My message is just what you said. How about we don't wait until that point? How about we start to really look at our bodies as truly sacred vessels? I know that sounds cliche, but what would we be without our bodies, right? They house our souls, our spirits. They make sure our brains, they make sure we can get where we want to go. They make sure we converse with people we love. They make sure we do all these things. So if we look at it that way and we think about really treating it with dignity and respect and honoring it, then we start to shift our behavior and our perspective around our relationship with our bodies. So that to me is about the wellness piece, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying, to raise a child, it takes a village. And really, to be healthy, it takes a team. It takes a network. You have to find practitioners, medical doctors that you trust. So you want to know who the good cardiologist is. You want to have a nutritionist possibly, and a chiropractor and a naturopath, and you want to have a holistic dentist, a dentist who's won't think you're an idiot because you want to take the mercury out of your mouth. So you really need to put together a network of providers to protect yourself.
Yes. And so I think that's one of the biggest paradigm shifts is, older generations tend to think that the doctor is a godlike figure that has all the answers to everything. And no matter what they say, that is the truth. And, you know, through my medical journey, I've had a long medical journey. I mean, my goodness, when I was a child, I almost lost my life to a severe iron deficiency. I was on a vaccine for 6 years because my pediatrician happened to be an epidemiologist, because they could not control my fevers for a long time, years. And this, by the time I was 6, when I found my mother was sent to this particular pediatrician, they admitted me to the hospital right away, or I wasn't going to make it. And for 6 years, they basically had to rebuild my immune system. And so I'm so thankful to Western medicine for that and building a base. And then it was up to me as an adult to take care of myself from that point forward. Unfortunately, I didn't. Became a workaholic, had terrible behavior habits. I smoked, I drank, both too much, in excess. I did not eat healthy. I did not honor my body at all. I ended up with fibromyalgia. My doctor thought, to your point earlier, that it was psychosomatic. It took me a long time to find someone to help me out of that situation. I was later diagnosed with breast cancer. When I finally hit rock bottom after the breast cancer diagnosis and had my wake-up call, that was when I completely entered the realm of holistic medicine. And from that point forward, I shifted gears. I had learned enough about my own wellness, my own body. I knew where I was going wrong and where I needed to take ownership and change my ways and how I contributed to it. I knew where Western practitioners were helping me, and I knew where they were hurting me. And I knew there was a gap to fill. But it was up to me to be the owner of my body and to make those decisions and to determine who was going to help me. So when you say you need a whole network, I could not agree with you more. I have a slew of practitioners because I don't just listen to one person's opinion. I recognize that that person's trained in that particular arena. That other person is trained in that particular arena. All of it has to do with my health and well-being, but I'm the only one that knows what it feels like to be me. And so how much, when you're working with a patient, do you depend on what they're saying to you, what they're reporting to you?
Everything?
Exactly. So if they just put it blindly in your hands, you're going to get a real mediocre result. And I do think that's a generational thing.
It's interesting. We're having a conversation right now, but typically when a patient comes to me, I really don't do too much communicating because, okay, I have the background, the educational background. I have the experience. I've been practicing 30 years. But I'm at the point now, rather than doing a technique on somebody, I'm basically listening, letting the body tell me and what the person's telling me. It's kind of, there's two things going on. It's what the person tells me, plus it's kind of into my intuition and what the intuition is telling me. So there's a few things going on. And so sometimes I get people say, hey, you don't really talk too much, but it's because I'm busy listening. I'm listening to what the person's telling me, and I'm listening to what the intuition is telling me, besides what is known as far as, bones, bloods and bones and all that. And the experience, if I do one thing, the result will be this or that. So to me, it's a matter about listening. And I think that's true in relationships too. If you're going to talk about conflict rising, I mean, it's basically problem comes in when people don't listen, and then there's a misunderstanding.
Yeah. And so, so let's just let listeners know up front, the rest of the show is dedicated to empowering all of you to take ownership of your wellness. So we're going to take a commercial break, and when we return, we'll continue the conversation with Dr. Mike Greenberg. Stay tuned.
connecting you with the best of the conscious minds in the world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything.
I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here talking to Dr. Mike Greenberg about the importance of integrating holistic medicine into your wellness plan. So, Dr. Mike, thanks for being on the show. We've kind of teased it off with talking about the differences between Western and Eastern medicine and the importance of holistic care in terms of optimizing wellness. But if we step back and looked at really conflict associated with this industry, I know for myself that over the years I've watched the evolution of kind of mainstream awareness of the importance of holistic medicine. Yet there is still a faction of people that think of it as woo-woo. Pardon the juvenile expression, but
it's true.
How much of that do you still bump up against today?
All the time.
All the time. Okay.
I mean, when you watch TV, say you allow yourself an hour to watch one show a night, and between the show, they'll have commercials, and the commercials will be advertising some kind of pharmaceutical to help you with some symptoms that you may be having. And at the end, there's a litany of side effects that you kind of don't want to really hear about. So, but we're inundated. You look at advertisements, you look at a magazine. It's borderline indoctrination that if you have some kind of symptom or problem, there's a medication out there to help you. And if you happen to one night see a show, maybe it's a comedy show, they may mention a chiropractor or acupuncturist or a naturopath once in a blue moon, and usually that person is presented as like some kind of woo-woo shaman. I mean, it's just humor, but that's the most you'll ever. Maybe 1 out of 100 times. So if you don't see it on TV, people tend not to believe it. If you see it on TV, people tend to believe it. And that's basically the situation with traditional or conventional medicine and holistic methods. Now, a person that's really into it, someone that is really into finding out what they can do to prevent disease or for optimal performance. Athletes, I remember in Los Angeles, I was never into bodybuilding, but it was the bodybuilders that were really ahead of their time, is trying to find out which nutrients, which technique, biofeedback, whatever it could do to get them to that next level. And so if you're already into it, it seems to be growing, but you have to go out and search for it. You're not going to see it on TV.
Yeah, and now that you say that, I mean, I don't watch much TV at all anyway, but and so sometimes it's hard for me to remember what it's like to really allow myself to be just taken in by the bigger culture around me. But to your point, it's everywhere. The few times I do tune in, it is nearly every commercial break has at least one, if not half a dozen. And again, it's not that drugs are bad. It's not that you shouldn't get an intervention if you need one. But my example in life for myself and my daughter, who had severe, debilitating food allergies when we met you years ago, this was 10 years ago, her pediatrician was treating the symptoms, and I kept saying, but what's the root cause? There's something causing this. The treatments were causing incredible side effects. I remember going to the only pediatric urologist in the state of Georgia, and they gave the treatment that they gave her. They said to me, I kid you not, she was 4 years old, and they said to me, now if she starts growing pubic hair, you need to stop.
God.
And I literally, I was speechless, and you know me, I'm very rarely speechless. I thought, did I hear that right? Did they just suggest that this is what we're doing to my 4-year-old? So you can imagine how long I stayed at that place, but it was my only option in the state. And so I went to a pediatric gastroenterologist, and he ran all the, typical diagnostics and couldn't find anything. I went on a witch hunt for 5 years to get to the bottom of my child's issue. And it was absolutely holistic practices that brought her out. And so now for many years running, she has been able to eat whatever she wants. And she chooses a very healthy diet because she knows what it's like to feel awful all the time. She was miserable. And you were really a huge, huge part of that wellness team that brought her back to a better state than she ever had in her life, probably. And she maintains that now. So between her experiences and my experiences, my belief is take the intervention if your situation has become so acute that you need an immediate intervention, right? It was imperative that we had something to treat her symptoms because we were in the ER all the time with convulsions, and we didn't know what was causing it. So we needed something to settle down her system. When I had fibromyalgia, I needed to be able to function. But the promise I made to my daughter and the promise I made to myself was, as soon as you stabilize this situation and you have the wherewithal to take it to the next level, then I took it upon myself to find another team of practitioners that would help me then come off the drug or off the intervention by getting my body or my daughter's body really healed. And so I think there's a significant difference between treatment and true healing practices, helping the body restore itself. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, we're on the same page. I think this either or, right or left, this type of thinking is not productive. I think you need to utilize the best of both worlds. Like you said, there's some things that they do are great holistically or traditionally, and there's some things that they don't do so great. So what you want to do is utilize the best of both worlds. I mean, people come to me and they go, I want to take care of the cause. And I'm kind of like going, but if you continue to be in pain, that's not so great. So treating the symptom is important. And if the symptom, like you're saying, if the symptom is debilitating, well, you don't even have to think about it. You have to take care of it. So yeah, you want to address the symptoms, and you want to address the causes if they can be figured out. So I think the theme is utilize the best of both worlds.
And so what is your perspective on the body's ability to heal?
Well, I believe the body has the ability to heal itself, and it just may need a certain button pushed. It needs a certain conditions, but we have the ability to heal ourselves. We're being conditioned that you need a pill to be healed, but I would say 90% of the pills have to do with symptoms. They're not really curing anything. But this is the way we were being conditioned. But it's been my experience in my life, the body has the ability to heal itself.
And how much of what you do stimulates that healing process?
Well, I mean, that's the basic chiropractic. If before you even get into holistic things, the basic premise of chiropractic is that if something is out of alignment and you put it back into alignment, the body will heal itself to release the symptom and promote better body function. So that is basic. Basic.
Yeah.
That's chiropractic 101. I mean, that's the whole idea.
Mm-hmm. And there still are a lot of people.
I know we're talking about holistic things, but I had a lady come to me, this was a few years ago, and she was experiencing vertigo, like a dizziness, and she also, what happened was she was having hearing loss, and she went to her ENT doctor, and after a thorough exam, he found that she had a tumor on the nerves that leads from the inner ear to the brain, an acoustic neuroma. But most of those things, thank God, are benign. So he removed it for her, but unfortunately her dizziness continued. So she suffered for a while, and she tried medications, but the medications made her worse. So a friend of hers twisted her arm, told her to come see me, and so I did that. And, I mean, when she came in, I was able to do some of these energy treatments, restore her balance. And so she was really, really happy. And she said to me, ever since the surgery, I also have like an inguinal pain, pelvic pain on one side, on the same side where she had the surgery. So I don't know if the two were connected, but she said that ever since then she had this pelvic pain. And she told me that she went to her gynecologist, and the gynecologist ruled out any problems with her reproductive system. So she sent her to an internist, and the internist didn't find anything and referred her to a gastroenterologist who did a colonoscopy and didn't find anything. So he sent her to a neurologist, figuring out maybe there's a nerve issue. But he didn't find anything abnormal, so he sent her to an orthopedist who did an X-ray and an MRI, and everything was negative for disease, fracture, disc rupture, or ligamentous tears. So the orthopedist referred her back to the gynecologist, thinking, well, maybe there's a hormonal imbalance or it's perimenopause. So it kind of those are all good. She found out that they couldn't find anything, which is good because you don't want to find another tumor or something like that.
Exactly.
And so she came to me, and she was pretty discouraged because she felt like she's been to everyone and nobody can find anything. And so I kind of I know medical doctors aren't trained in functional spinal mechanics, that they're looking for disease. They're looking for fractures. Okay. They're looking for some kind of pathology. But if something's out of alignment, which could be putting pressure on a nerve or something like that, they don't recognize it because they're not trained in it. So I figured, okay, I did an examination, checked her out, and I saw her tailbone was out of alignment. And I did a classic one-side chiropractic adjustment. And when she came back, for the follow-up visit, she said her pain was gone, and she was dealing with that for 3 years. So
yeah, that's a powerful story.
There's while you and I are into the holistic thing, there's also basic things that can be beneficial at the right place at the right time.
Well, and it goes right back to where we started, which is you need a whole network of professionals, right? Because, and that as much of a wild goose chase that she's been on, and you know how much money and time has been spent on that wild goose chase, it's easy for someone to then either say, this is worthless, or I must be a hypochondriac because nobody can find anything, right? There's so many things that can come out of an experience like that, but your perspective is such a healthy one, which is thank goodness, because you can't put a price tag on peace of mind. So now she knows the big things have been ruled out. That's priceless.
Right.
That is priceless. But what most people don't know when they get to the end of that road is there is a whole slew of holistic practices or traditional chiropractic, which a lot of people would think of being more, alternative. Not those that subscribe to it, obviously, but there's still a whole faction of people who think of it as alternative. But the bottom line is there are all these other practices beyond what we think of as these traditional specialists and traditional practitioners that do have answers that the other practitioners have not been trained in. And that's really, for me, the conclusion that I came to many years ago, which is I can't blame them. They're not trained in it. It is up to me to understand who to go to for what. And I learned it from my grandmother before she passed away in the late 90s. I sat down. It was one of my last conversations with her. And I said, Grandma, there are 14 pill bottles sitting here on your table. How many of these drugs are treating your cancer, and how many of them are treating side effects? She put her glasses on, giggled. She said, well, I don't know. Let me look. She read every single one, made a list, and said, well, look at that. 2 of them treat my cancer. 12 of them treat the side effects. 9 months later, I was diagnosed with something that, it was fibromyalgia at the time, but they said, the only way we can treat this is through drugs. And I said, oh no. I was in my late 20s, and I said to my doctor, by the time I'm 60, if you put me on these drugs, how many drugs will I be taking to treat the side effects, and how high will my dosage be because my body's outgrown it? And she looked me squarely in the eye and said, you don't want the answer to those questions. I said, then I'm not taking that path. I will let you put me on the drug today because I have to get out of bed. But when I have my energy back, I will find another way. And I was only on drugs for 18 months. But I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to say that to her had I not had that conversation with my grandmother less than a year prior. So, I just think the reason I was so excited for you to be on the show and to share so much of your perspective is to open up those closed minds that really just subscribe to whatever their medical doctor is telling them, or and if they don't have answers, that's okay. Other people do. Do not give up. I used to tell my daughter when she was young and she was so physically miserable, I'd say, for every problem there's a solution, we just need to find it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about those solutions when we return. Stay tuned.
Free your mind with OMTimes Radio, IOM-FM. Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everyone. We're continuing our conversation about holistic medicine with Dr. Mike Greenberg. And when we broke for commercial, I said, we'll come back and talk about some solutions. So I know that there are so many holistic practices. We can't begin to name them all right now or list out every single problem that they could solve. It would be innumerable. But let's start, Dr. Mike, with just, can you share with us what are the different techniques or practices that you've been trained in that you incorporate? Because it seems to me that as your patient, you are incorporating a whole lot of knowledge from multiple different trainings into one simple process when I come see you. Are there any particular modalities that you want to share with the listeners, or any more stories of the powerful impact that it can have on certain health issues that you see often?
Okay, well, there's a lot of different things I do, and I guess what you're alluding to is what makes me different is that I do probably 7-8 different techniques, and I combine them all together. A lot of times when you go to a chiropractor, he does nutrition, or the chiropractor does emotional work, or he does allergies, and I kind of do a lot of different techniques and combine it into. I try to combine it all together. So it always depends on what the person's come to see me for. So if they're coming in and they're going, okay, I have a pollen allergy, and I don't want to go for shots every week for a couple of years. Can you treat that? Can you treat hay fever? And so I'll use a technique called NATE. It's an acronym for non-putrid pod algae elimination technique, and I'll clear their body for reacting to pollen. There's a very gentle, natural way to reprogram the body so it doesn't react. Some people get stuck in life. They've done well, but for some reason, say like writer's block, they come in and they're saying, I'm stuck. Sometimes an athlete comes in and says, my times have improved, but now I've plateaued. I can't seem to get any better. And so for that, I'll use a technique called NET, neuroemotional technique. Some people, they may be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. It could have been from the war. They could have had some kind of abuse. It's unfortunate, but I do a technique called EMDR, where I have them think of the trauma and move their eyes back and forth. And within 24 hours, a lot of that trauma, the charge has been released. So it depends on what the patient wants to accomplish, and then I adjust. Just like some people come in, they go, I don't want to be cracked. Don't crack me. I go, okay. And some people come in, will you please do a manipulation of my neck? So I feel like something was done. So I try to tailor my treatments to what the person wants and what they're looking for. And of course,
again,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like I was going to say, and again, I can attest that it is really powerful stuff. It has been life-changing for all of us in my family.
The neuroemotional technique, I'll have somebody stick out their arm and muscle test them. And if their muscle is strong, I know there's no problem with their shoulder. There's no rotator cuff problem or something like that. And I'll have them make a statement, a simple statement like, I'm okay with stress. I'm okay with conflict. And if they can't hold their arm up, I know there's something in their subconscious that interferes. I had an athlete come to me back in the day, and he was a good athlete. He was fourth in the world in hurdles, and he always came in fourth. I mean, sometimes people come in further behind, sometimes they do a little bit better, but he always came in fourth. And the coach from UCLA said, like, can you do anything with this guy? So, I'm thinking maybe he's got a problem, an issue with winning. Some people don't want to stand out. So I had him stick out his arm and say, I'm okay with winning. And he was strong as a bull. So I'm kind of like, okay, I don't know what it is. And so I checked his alignment, did a little tune-up, make sure his muscles were balanced. And for a week, I kind of tossed and turned. What could it be? What could be the problem? And it came to me that he wasn't okay with losing. And I'm kind of like going, well, I'm not okay with losing. You're not. No one's okay with losing. But so the next time he came into the office, I had him stick out his arm and had him say, I'm okay with losing. And he couldn't hold his arm up. So the technique is you go through the body and you find out when the original button or trigger started and what the feeling is. And so what came up was his kidneys, a feeling of fear, and it happened 4 years. Most of the time I find with people it happened when they were a child. But with him, it was 4 years previously when the first time he was in a big major competition, he came in fourth. So it seemed to me, I'm not a psychologist, I don't try to play psychologist, but it seemed to me that when he lined up in future races, he just had it in his mind, he's going to come in fourth. And so I treated him for that. And what happened was he started relaxing and he let go of losing. And within 4 months, this was in '92 when the Summer Olympics in Barcelona came, he broke the world record, Edwin Most record. And today, as of today, his record still hasn't been broken. It's the longest record in track and field. So that's that's a really subtle thing because, I tap on his back, his arm went from weak to strong. And that's all it's hard to imagine that this could change his life like that. So,
right. And I think it's so hard to imagine. I think it's so hard to imagine that that's where people go back to, oh, this is woo-woo, because they don't believe it. They just don't want to believe that there is that much power in the unconscious that it can come out through such a simple technique. And it's so related to what I do because I do so much behavior change in the workplace around culture change and leadership development. And my whole methodology is based on those unconscious beliefs because those are driving behaviors. Those are driving self-sabotaging unconscious behaviors. And so similar to your story, I see story after story after story among my clients where something unconscious is at the root of their behavioral or emotional issue, whereas what you're showing is that goes so far as getting in the way of their physical performance, right? And I think, too, and I warn people in the workplace all the time, if you do not address this issue, it will ultimately manifest in your body as a physical illness. And
Absolutely.
that's why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it doesn't have to be muscle testing. It doesn't have to be kinesiology. It doesn't have to be a needle acupuncture. It doesn't have to be a vitamin. And merely, I shouldn't say merely, I mean, because that's an art. But if you can communicate with somebody and they open up to you, you can tap into that subconscious or unconscious and change their life. I mean, that's the way it works.
Yes.
But it was stuck. It was stuck there.
Yes. Yes. And that's the whole mind, body, spirit cliche that to me is extremely sound and solid. For me, if you look at it more from a scientific perspective, mind, body, and spirit translates into we are neurally wired on a certain belief system, and those neural pathways and that neural circuitry is connected to every single thing in our bodies. So why would we think that when we trigger a neural pathway, it wouldn't engage with a memory and then hit a biochemical response and ultimately manifest into a physical issue? Why would we not think that that is possible? Of course it is. It happens all day, every day. So
I remember in the late 80s. I'm going back now, but I remember in the late 80s, there was this came out. Some scientists wanted to prove the mind-body connection, and I was in the office and I look in the mirror. Had a full-length mirror in the office, and I look at myself and I see, my head is attached to my body. So I knew that for me, that's all the science I needed. To me, that was scientifically proven. I mean, not to take anything away from science, and I'm glad they're going to do it. But to me, that was a no-brainer.
Right. And in my world, it is too, because that's what I look at all day, every day. But to your point earlier in the show, when we become indoctrinated in a treat the symptom mentality, then all of a sudden the paradigm becomes fully about just the physical state. And we are denying the holistic view of the human experience. What is it to be a human being? So oftentimes in my work, when I'm giving speeches or presentations, I'll say, listen, here's what you're up against inside your brain, all this neural circuitry. Here's what it's doing. The only thing that, in my opinion, that is as powerful or more is the human spirit. So if you're not developing your spiritual practices and working on that to balance all this out, your body is going to take such a beating.
I mean, what good is it to be on a diet, to be eating this nutritional diet, and you hate it? I mean, you have to feed your spirit.
Right.
So, and what good does it do to go out and say, okay, I'm going to lift weights because I want to be, I want to be stronger, I want to be in better shape, and you hate it? Take a Zumba class. Do something that's fun. You have to feed the spirit. And that's the thing with the workplace. If you're in a job just to make a living, which is important, I don't want to be, impractical here, but hopefully we can get to the point where we do something that we enjoy, that we could actually be open to loving. You want to enjoy your work. So as people get sick, not only because of so much negativity in the environment, this toxic environment, but because they're not happy with either, the workplace or, something that's going on in their life. And that's why they have to take medication and things like that. So, not that we think that, but that's where it's the spirit. I mean, that people have to be happy with the different aspects of their life.
Yes. So, I think
or at
our
least
bottom
try
line
to
message.
be. I mean, sometimes it takes steps to get there. So as long as you feel like you're on the road, that will suffice. That will allow you to hang in there till you get there.
Right. Because if your belief system says, you know, to establish your worth, you have to work harder and harder and harder. You have to just deal with it, you know, pull up your bootstraps, or you made this commitment, so you're going to have to do whatever it takes to just keep that commitment. You know, when we get wired on belief systems like this, it becomes entrapment. And certainly it's going to play out in the body. Ultimately, if it doesn't play out in mental illness, it's going to play out in physical illness, because we are entrapping our spirits and our true desire and our love for ourselves and for our lives. They're entrapped inside this belief. And so, you know, I think our bottom line message today is, if you are in an acute physical situation, find the right practitioner that can provide you with an intervention to get out of that acute situation. And that could be a holistic practitioner, and it could be a traditional medical practitioner. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of practitioners. Keep doing your homework till you find it. And then once you stabilize your situation, yes, then focus on wellness and what you love. And one thing I know I love, Dr. Mike, is you and your work, and you have done such remarkable work for our family. So thank you for being on the show today. And you can go and find his bio on my website. And if you're in Atlanta, go visit him. And if you're not, love yourself and find a holistic practitioner near you. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you next week.